I was encouraged to post this story here from Creepy Encounters. I hesitate to use the word stalked due to the infrequency of when things happened, but I really don't have another word for what's been going on for so long. I'm a 28-year-old female from South Carolina. This man, my mom's ex-boyfriend, has been an unwelcome intrusion in our lives for 30 years, and frankly, I have a feeling it's not going to end anytime soon. Short of taking drastic measures that are too extreme to even consider. My family and I don't seem to have much choice other than to put up with it. We can't ignore it, because just when you think it's over, he pops back up. Or we run into him in town, someone mentions his name, or an event will trigger a memory, and we're right back in that hopeless, frustrating feeling of powerlessness. I can't recount every single step that's brought my family to this point. It would just take too long, but I can relate the major events that have happened. Even without every detail, this is going to be pretty long. I guess I should start at the beginning. To make a very long story short, my mom met this guy in high school. His name was Rick. Rick and my mom dated for 4 years, starting at the end of their senior year. He was the son of a local politician, very good-looking and athletic. I've talked with her at length about her time with him, and she told me that while they were initially together, there wasn't anything that she saw that would indicate something was off about him. Slowly, though, over the course of the relationship, he changed. He started telling her what she could wear, who she could talk to. He told her that she couldn't smoke anymore, that she had to get a new car because he couldn't be seen with her in that old truck that she drove, that she needed to move out of her parents' house and marry him as soon as possible. He was also pushing her pretty hard about sleeping with him. She didn't, and she was never able to say, at least to me, why that was, other than a feeling that she had that she shouldn't. For the most part, my mom ignored the way he was, trying to control her life. She didn't do any of the things he wanted her to do. She's stubborn and very no-nonsense type of person, so it floors me that she put up with his crap for so long. But she didn't feel like she could do any better, and she thought that, given time, she could change him. Rick didn't change. At least, not for the better. If anything, he got worse. He became verbally abusive, and he put her down every chance he got. Eventually, she broke up with him. She had found out that he was sleeping with a friend of hers, among several other women. Over the course of the year that they were no longer together, Rick was constantly trying to get back with her. He'd call her at work, at home. He'd drive by where she was working her second job, or follow her when she drove somewhere other than to work or home. He tried to get her friends to tell him where she was or to give her messages for him. He even had his mother stop by the grocery store and plead with her to get back with him. She told my mom that even though she was from a lower class trash, her son was devastated without my mom in his life. While all of this was happening, my mom met my dad, and when Rick found out about it, he seemed to back off a little, and comes from a rough family with a reputation for fighting. I guess that made him hesitate to keep up with his behavior, for a little while anyway. That changed when my parents got married. My mom would pick up the phone when it rang and hear heavy breathing on the other line. A man's voice that was clearly disguised would try to ask her questions about her marriage, or say something lewd about her or the intimate aspect of my parents' relationship. I say try because as soon as she heard the voice, she'd hang up, although she wasn't always quick enough. Back then, there were no stalker laws, and since there wasn't any kind of physical assault, there wasn't much the police could do about it. Not that they would have anyway. We're from a small town. Population hardly more than about 5,000, and the sheriff was real good friends with Rick's father. Suffice to say, the legal avenue was closed to my family. My grandmothers, tired of the harassment of their children, got together at one point and cornered Rick's mom in town one afternoon. They told her point blank that if she couldn't get a handle on her son and his behavior, they were going to make sure the newspapers found out what other recreational activities he had been up to, which, as you can probably guess, weren't legal. Again, the call stopped. Then I and my sister were born, and all hell broke loose. Rumors started flying around town that Rick was actually our father, and that my mom had been having an affair with him. Pictures of my mom with us at the store or somewhere in town would turn up in the mailbox, along with letters stating how much we looked like Rick. Or, even more creepy, they would say how much we looked like our mom and how very attractive we were going to be when we grew up. When my mom showed that particular letter to my dad, he was livid. That night, he drove out to the dive bar, where Rick and his friends were known to hang out. Rick wasn't there, but about 3 of his buddies were. My dad demanded that they tell him where Rick was, but they wouldn't. When my dad turned to get back in his truck, intending to keep looking for him, the men ganged up on him. Like I said before, my dad's a big dude, and he grew up fighting. He handed their butts to them, broke 2 noses, and the other one lost his front teeth. He told them to let Rick know that he'd find him if anything else happened. Several years went by very quietly. We worked and we made a life as a close-knit family. But when we were around 16 and 15, things started up again. Rick had, by this point, started and failed several businesses, gotten married twice, and had children of his own. With mouths to feed, he'd taken a job as a manager at the local grocery store. I was at driving age by this point, and it wasn't uncommon for my mom to send my sister and I to the store while she worked. We always enjoyed this, because it gave us a chance to play our loud music and talk out of our mom's earshot about things she really wouldn't have wanted to hear. You know, typical teen girls. The first time we went in, and Rick was working there, he saw us, and he easily recognized us. I look more like my mom than my sister does, pretty much a carbon copy of her, whereas my sister is a spitting image of my dad. Plus, it's a small town. It wasn't hard for him to figure out who we were, and when he did, he followed us through the whole store. Every time we turned down an aisle, he'd be there, with the creepiest smile on his face. We had no idea who he was. We were practically babies when the pictures and letters had been put into our mailbox, and as children, it was a topic that our parents had rightfully not talked about in front of us. It wasn't until we were in our late teens that we were told the whole truth. Rick stopped us at the end of every aisle and would ask us questions. He asked us if we knew our mom's birthday, if we liked the same things she did, if we liked our dad. He told us how pretty we looked and how much we resembled her. We brushed most of this off. We were used to being recognized by people in town that knew our parents and grandparents. Most of the time, they'd just say something like, "Hey, I knew your mom," and never introduce themselves beyond that. So it didn't strike us as weird. It was the shower of compliments about our looks and our figures that made us uncomfortable. We rushed through the store as fast as we could get away from him and back home. We didn't say anything to our parents, Both of our parents are overprotective, and we didn't really want to stir up any trouble. Stupid idea, I know. Boy, do I know. Because this became a weekly ritual for almost a year. Every week, we would be sent to the store for the groceries, and Rick would be there, following us around. No one said anything, even though the cashiers would look at him funny as he stood in the checkout line with us, staring at us and talking nonstop. It got to the point that we would be in tears when we got outside again. But there wasn't a word said. Maybe the other people working in the store thought that they'd get punished or fired. Maybe they were afraid of him. I don't know. But when we finally did tell our parents, they were furious. Not so much with us, but over what had happened to us. We stopped going to that store and started shopping at the Walmart in the next town over. My granddad met with the store owner, and Rick lost his job. Again, things were quiet for a few years. Occasionally, we'd see him in town, and when we did, we avoided him as best as we could. Sometimes he'd sneak up on us and try to talk to us. Raised in the South, United States, tradition of manners, we couldn't just ignore him without feeling like we were committing a sin, so we made it as brief as possible. The compliments still came, weird and entirely unwelcomed, but neither of us knew how to handle them other than to say, "Thank you," and leave quickly. Time went on, and we went to college, pretty far off, where there wasn't a chance of running into him. But he was still a presence. When Facebook came out, he was there, trying to friend us, sending us messages to ask how our mom was doing, and how we liked our school. We both blocked him, but he somehow tracked down our email addresses. It wouldn't have been hard for him to get them. He just had to ask the right people, and we never thought about having to guard that information. Both of us got bombarded with emails from Rick, asking us the same questions again about our parents, and talking about how much he looked forward to seeing us at home. The worst one was a message he sent me, asking me to let my mom know that all she had to do was tell him she was leaving my dad, and he'd divorce his current wife and leave his kids, and marry her, and that he could be the dad my sister and I needed in our lives. I blocked him immediately and called my sister to let her know so she could be on the lookout. My mom doesn't have an email address, so he couldn't harass her like that, but the heavy-breathing phone calls came back for a while. Then we all got cell phones, and we haven't given the number to anyone except immediate family or people we can trust not to relay them to him. Which brings me to the most recent event, and the reason I decided to sit down and write this out. I've just moved back to my hometown, fresh out of grad school and newly married. Things have been quiet for a long time. Rick was the furthest thing from my mind. My husband and I had stopped by Walmart to pick up last-minute gifts for Christmas. We decided to split up, and I was just coming out of the restroom. My brain was focused on working my phone, trying to call my husband so I could find him in this supermarket labyrinth, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. Distracted, I turned around and almost dropped my phone when I realized I was standing face to face with that man. Rick grinned at me and said hello. I'm ashamed to say I couldn't do more than stare at him. He'd snuck up on me, and I was so startled and freaked out that I couldn't say a word. Then he leaned in with that smile on his face, the one he used to wear when he'd follow my sister and me. And he goes, "You look just like your mom. If I was your dad, though, you'd look more like me." I was frozen as he grinned at me for what was probably only a few seconds, but it felt much, much longer. Then I turned on my heel and walked away, as calmly as I could. I put my phone to my ear and called my husband. It took everything I had not to burst into tears right there in the middle of the store. My husband knows the stories, and he was ready to beat the crap out of Rick for saying anything to me, but I ushered him out to the car. I just wanted to go home, so we did. Without buying anything that day, I told my parents, and they were angry too. They still are. It seems like no matter how much time passes, Rick's still hanging around like a boogeyman. It's not over, and I know that. It might not ever be, but it feels good to get this all out. I don't know what to make of his little declaration, but it makes me feel sick to my stomach to think too much about it, or what else other than the obvious he might have been implying. What I do know is that I'm very, very grateful that he isn't my dad, because I can't imagine what my life would have been like then. Alright, my lovely lilies, thank you so much for watching the new video. If you can, hit that subscribe and like button, comment below and tell me your thoughts. Also, don't forget to tap the little notification bell so you're always in the know on this channel. As well, guys, you can always find me on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and always you can hit me up in my emails. Feel free to send me your stories, whether they're fiction or totally true. I'm always up for some great stories. And oh, by the way, until next time, sweet dreams.